Irwin Cotler is an aging Liberal MP from Montreal. He's about to retire, but in one last political missile at Canada, he has lodged in Parliament a private member's bill, Bill C-671. It's officially called an act to amend the Canadian Human Rights Act, but I think a more fitting name for it is the Charlie Hebdo Act, because if this bill, God forbid, became law, it would make the publication of satire and controversial magazines and internet blogs like Charlie Hebdo illegal in our once free country. Here, if you don't believe me, I'll take you through it, but first, let's hear from Cotler himself when he introduced the bill.
Freedom of expression is the lifeblood of democracy.
Now, if he would have put a period at the end of the sentence and ended it there, I'd say, right on, that's a Canadian value. But like so many censors, he puts the word but in. However, but freedom of expression is the lifeblood of democracy, but
Hate speech is not simply a matter of offending sensibilities or being politically correct, which is protected speech. It causes real and tangible harm, can assault the very values underlying free speech, can breach our international commitments, and can assault the principle of equality.
Hang on a second. So free speech can assault free speech. So if we use free speech, that undermines free speech. This is a law professor. Yeah, professor, I think it's time to retire. But look what he's saying. He's using the words tangible harm and assault. I know what an assault is. If you come up to me and punch me, that's an assault and battery. It's a real harm, a real crime. We've all heard the saying, sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Irwin Cotler is using a rhetorical trick to try to say that mere words is the same as a punch in the nose. It's not. And we know that he knows that Canadians would not support that interpretation unless he uses the trickery to throw in lots of words like assault when he's actually seeking to illegalize peaceful words. He says that if we don't censor speech he doesn't like, quote, it can breach our international commitments and can assault the principle of equality. Well, I don't know what international commitments he's talking about, and frankly, I don't care what we've promised the United Nations, which is full of dictators and despots and censors. I don't believe in answering to them. I believe in answering to Canadians and our Charter of Rights and our rights that predate that, freedom of speech of which is the first. And I don't know what he means by the principle of equality. In fact, free speech is the great equalizer, because whether you're rich or poor, you both have the ability to call out change. In fact, throughout history, people who are weak and have no political power, have no financial power, but have a good idea can win in freedom of speech, whether it's women winning with the suffragette movement, or Martin Luther King in the civil rights movement, or even the gay rights movement more recently. Groups that are powerless can use free speech for their power. Irwin Cotler would take away controversial and offensive speech from the very people who need it. We need controversial speech. We don't just need speech that everyone agrees with, recipes or sports scores or the weather. We need controversial speech that opens up ideas. And that is the very speech that the Charlie Hebdo Act would illegalize. Here, let me take you through the law, but before I do, I want to show you a master at handling the I believe in freedom of expression but crowd. He calls it the but brigades. Here, listen to Salman Rushdie, whose own life was threatened by Muslim extremists because he dared to exercise his free speech. Take a listen.
The rise of what I call the butt brigade. I've got so sick of the goddamn butt brigade. And now, the moment somebody says, yes, I believe in free speech, but, I stop listening. No, because I believe in free speech, but people should behave themselves. I believe in free speech, but we shouldn't upset anybody. I believe in free speech, but let's not go too far. The point about it is the moment you limit free speech, it's not free speech. The point about it is that it's free.
There's Salman Rushdie. I think we need a lot more Salman Rushdie and a lot less of censors like Irwin Cotler. But let me take you through the provisions of C-671, the Charlie Hebdo Act, to prove to you how un-Canadian and illiberal it is. It's ironic that Cotler calls himself a liberal. The root of the word liberal is the Latin word for freedom. Tell me if you can spot any freedom in his Charlie Hebdo Act. Let's start at the beginning. Here is the heart of his censorship law. He says, if this bill passes, it is a discriminatory practice for a person or a group of persons to communicate by telephone or on the internet any matter that exposes or tends to expose to hatred any person, including any matter that incites a level of abhorrence, delegitimization, and rejection that could reasonably be expected to cause discrimination. So if you say some words that could, not for sure will or have, could cause feelings of rejection, could cause people to change their minds and harden their hearts on something, that's against the law. So no real assault. If you manage to convince someone to have some feeling, that is what Irwin Cotler, the liberal law professor, civil liberties professor, can you imagine a civil liberties? That's like a chicken for Colonel Sanders, a liberal for this sort of censorship. Here, let me read some more. I want to quote to you more from the act, because I'm quite sure that the media party wouldn't report this on to you. Here, let me show you that this isn't just about word crimes, speech crimes, or thought crimes. This is actually about feelings crimes or emotion crimes. I'm quoting again. For the purposes of this section, hatred means vilification and unusually strong and deep felt emotions of detestation. Emotions. So this law is illegalizing emotions that the government thinks are inappropriate. The government is saying you cannot feel certain emotions. I think that's outrageous. You can't turn off your emotions. Love, hate, contempt, respect. These are naturally occurring feelings. What we want to govern is what we do about them. If someone feels hate, they shouldn't assault you. But if someone feels hate, that could be a tremendous motivation to do good things, to transform those negative feelings into something positive. Irwin Cotler proposes to make illegal emotions that he doesn't believe you should have. That's the substance of this bill. It's a censorship bill, a final epitaph on Irwin Cotler's career to bring in censorship. That's the substance, but look at the process, and this is truly bizarre for a professor of law. He wants to bring back secret hearings with secret complainants. Let me quote for you. If the Human Rights Commission has reasonable grounds for believing that there is a real and substantial risk that a complainant will be subjected to retaliation, ridicule, harassment, or discrimination as a result of filing a complaint, the Commission may deal with a complaint without disclosing their identity. So let me say that again. If this Human Rights Commission, a bunch of social justice warrior, radical activist lawyers say, we think that this complaint will be mocked and laughed at. Well, we can't allow that. We can't allow illegal laughing or illegal ridicule, so we will allow this complainant to make their complaint in secret. Like a star chamber, you don't know who made the accusation against you. You are denied your fundamental and ancient right to face your accuser. You don't know if your accuser is a disgruntled employee you fired, or a rival, a personal rival, an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend. You are not permitted to know the identity of the person making the complaint. That's a destruction of fundamental justice, but of course, even a deeper concern is that the Human Rights Commission would do this because they don't want people to laugh. So there's all sorts of emotions being banned here, the emotion of hate and the emotion of mirth and laughter. What a bizarre attempt at social engineering. I want to read just one more part of the bill to you. And this is the perfect Orwellian part. I mean, I've just taken you through passage after passage of censorship, not just of words and things on the internet and on telephone, but emotions of hate and laughter. But get this is just the icing on the cake. This is pure, muddled leftist thinking. At the very end, after censoring all these things, this bill, this Charlie Hebdo Act, says the Human Rights Commission may decline to deal with a complaint if it restricts freedom of expression in public debate. Say what? Every single thing this bill does restricts freedom of expression. Laughter, anger, love, hate, words, ridicule, emotions, controversies, that is all in the public debate. And yet they say, oh, by the way, all this censorship, we're doing it despite the fact that it actually limits debate. We're going to say that we don't limit debate, just like Irwin Cotler introduced this bill by saying he deeply, deeply believes in the lifeblood of freedom of speech. However, this bill is a disgrace. This bill would ban Charlie Hebdo magazine from being sold in Canada or even appearing on the internet in Canada. This bill is so vague, so double meaning, so split personality, claiming to be for freedom and yet not, claiming to protect emotions and yet not. This bill is so muddled. It is a perfect, vague, open to abuse law that would be a feast for activist bureaucrats, lawyers, and bullies seeking to censor. I am sure that deep in his heart, Irwin Cotler thinks that if a bill like this had been around in the 1930s, maybe Adolf Hitler would have been stopped. Yeah, well, the thing is, Adolf Hitler himself brought in censorship laws and used it against his critics. In the hands of the state, it's always the dissidents who get shut up. This law will be used against liberal Jews like Cotler. We see that with the complaints against myself and Mark Stein by Muslim extremists using it as lawfare. Adolf Hitler did not prosecute the Holocaust with words. He had bullets and deadly poison gas. By this bill, Irwin Cotler shows he is actually too cowardly to take on the coming Holocausts or the coming discrimination against Jews or Christians, fought not with words but by knives slitting throats. Irwin Cotler wants to fight the last war. Too bad. We need people to fight the war we're in now. For TheRebel.media, I'm Ezra Levant.